In the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan, where shadows dance between life and death, a single moment can shatter everything you think you know about survival. When elite Navy SEAL Team 7 discovered a bloodied woman stumbling through hostile territory, they thought they were witnessing another casualty of war. They had no idea they were about to meet someone who would redefine their understanding of strength, courage, and the deadly art of deception. What started as a routine rescue mission would become a legend whispered in military circles for years to come. Because sometimes, the person who appears most vulnerable is actually the most dangerous person in the room. And, sometimes, underestimating someone can be the last mistake you ever make. This is the true story of Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a woman who turned her greatest weakness into an unstoppable weapon, and the elite soldiers who learned that appearances can be more deadly than any enemy they had ever faced. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his rifle scope for the third time in 10 minutes. His jaw was tight with concentration, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool mountain air. Team 7 had been tracking a high-value target through these treacherous Afghan mountains for 72 hours, and every instinct told him they were close. Morrison had led countless missions in his 12-year career with the Navy SEALs, but something felt different about this operation. The intelligence was too clean, the enemy movements too predictable. It was like following breadcrumbs that someone wanted them to find. His team consisted of 6 of the most elite warriors the military had to offer, each man hand-picked for this critical mission. They moved like ghosts through the landscape, their black tactical gear making them nearly invisible against the rocky outcroppings. Sergeant First Class Tony Rodriguez, the team's communications specialist, crouched behind a boulder and spoke quietly into his headset. His dark eyes constantly scanned the horizon while his fingers worked the radio controls with practiced efficiency. Rodriguez had survived 3 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan, and his ability to read terrain had saved their lives more times than anyone could count. Today, his usual confidence seemed shaken by something he could not quite identify. The mission brief had been straightforward enough. Intelligence suggested that Khalil Hassan, a notorious bomb maker responsible for dozens of American casualties, was hiding in a compound somewhere in this mountain range. Hassan had eluded capture for over 2 years, always staying one step ahead of coalition forces. This time, however, they had received specific coordinates and timing from a supposedly reliable source. Morrison should have felt excited about finally cornering their target, but instead, he felt a nagging sense of unease. Corpsman Second Class Mike Chen moved silently beside Morrison, his medical kit secured tightly to his back. Chen was the youngest member of the team at 24, but his steady hands and quick thinking under pressure had already earned him the respect of every man in the unit. He had joined the SEALs straight from medical school, driven by a desire to serve his country and save lives on the front lines. His Asian features often made him blend in better with local populations during undercover operations, a skill that had proven invaluable on multiple occasions. The terrain they were crossing was among the most challenging Morrison had ever encountered. Loose rocks shifted under their boots, threatening to send cascades of stone tumbling down the mountainside. The air was thin at this altitude, making every breath a conscious effort. Ancient goat paths wound between towering cliffs, creating natural choke points where an ambush could easily be set. Every shadow could hide an enemy fighter, and every sound echoed off the canyon walls in ways that made it impossible to determine its source. Staff Sergeant David Park, their explosive ordnance specialist, paused to examine the ground ahead. His trained eyes could spot improvised explosive devices that others might miss, and his steady hands had defused more bombs than any other SEAL in active service. Park had grown up in Los Angeles, the son of Korean immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give him opportunities they never had. He carried their dreams with him into every dangerous situation, knowing that his skills could mean the difference between his team going home alive or in flag-draped coffins. As they crested a ridge overlooking a narrow valley, Morrison held up his fist, signaling the team to stop and take cover. Below them, a small village clung to the mountainside like a collection of ancient stone cubes. Smoke rose from several chimneys, indicating that the settlement was inhabited despite its remote location. Intelligence had suggested that Hassan might be hiding among the civilians, using them as human shields against military operations. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Williams, their sniper, immediately moved to an elevated position where he could provide overwatch for the team. Williams was a giant of a man, standing 6 feet 5 inches tall with arms like tree trunks, but he moved with the silent grace of a dancer when circumstances required it. His Mississippi drawl and easy smile had earned him the nickname Gentle Giant among his teammates, though enemies who found themselves in his crosshairs learned quickly that there was nothing gentle about his shooting skills. His rifle could eliminate targets at distances that seemed impossible to most people. The final member of their team, Petty Officer 2nd Class Alex Kumar, served as their technology specialist and second sniper. Kumar had immigrated to America from India as a child and had fallen in love with both the country and its military traditions. His expertise with electronic surveillance equipment had provided crucial intelligence on dozens of missions, and his ability to hack into enemy communications had often given them decisive advantages. Kumar carried more sophisticated technology than most small armies possessed, and he knew how to use every piece of it to maximum effect. Morrison studied the village through his binoculars, looking for any signs of unusual activity. The normal patterns of daily life seemed to be continuing below them. Children played in dusty streets while women carried water jugs between buildings. Men gathered in small groups, talking and smoking while keeping watchful eyes on the surrounding hills. Everything appeared normal, but Morrison had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving in this part of the world. It was Williams who spotted her first. His voice came through their communication system in a whisper that barely registered above the mountain wind. A lone figure was stumbling along the valley floor, moving erratically between rocks and fallen trees. Even from their elevated position, it was clear that something was wrong with the person's gait. They appeared to be injured or in distress, occasionally stopping to lean against boulders before continuing their unsteady progress. Morrison trained his binoculars on the figure and felt his breath catch in his throat. It was a woman, and she was clearly in bad shape. Her clothing was torn and stained with what appeared to be blood. Her long dark hair was matted and tangled, hanging around her face in a way that obscured her features. She moved with the desperate determination of someone fleeing from immediate danger, constantly looking over her shoulder as if expecting pursuit. The woman's appearance raised immediate questions that Morrison could not answer. What was a civilian woman doing alone in this remote area? Where had she come from, and what had happened to cause her obvious injuries? Most importantly, was she genuinely in distress, or was this some kind of trap designed to lure American forces into an ambush? Morrison had seen enemy fighters use every possible deception to gain tactical advantage, including using women and children as bait for carefully planned attacks. Chen moved closer to Morrison and spoke quietly into his headset. His medical training made him particularly sensitive to signs of genuine injury and distress, and everything he could observe suggested that the woman's condition was real and serious. The way she favored her left side indicated possible broken ribs, and the dark stains on her clothing were consistent with significant blood loss. If she was acting, she was doing an incredibly convincing job of it. Rodriguez began scanning radio frequencies, looking for any enemy communications that might indicate whether this was part of a coordinated operation against their team. His equipment picked up the usual background chatter from various military and civilian sources, but nothing that seemed directly related to their current situation. That could mean they were dealing with a genuine emergency, or it could mean that their enemies were maintaining radio silence to avoid detection. Park studied the terrain around the woman's position, looking for signs of recently buried explosives or hidden weapons. His trained eyes could spot disturbed earth or unusual objects that might indicate the presence of improvised explosive devices. The area appeared clean, but that did not necessarily mean it was safe. Modern bomb makers had become increasingly sophisticated in their ability to hide deadly surprises in seemingly innocent locations. Kumar focused his electronic surveillance equipment on the village below, looking for heat signatures or communication signals that might indicate the presence of enemy fighters. His screen showed the normal patterns of a small mountain community going about its daily business. Children showed up as small, fast-moving heat sources while adults appeared as larger, more stationary signatures. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but Kumar knew that appearances could be deceiving when dealing with experienced insurgents. The woman suddenly collapsed behind a large boulder, disappearing from view for several long seconds. When she reappeared, she was crawling rather than walking, pulling herself forward with obvious difficulty. Blood was now clearly visible on the rocks where she had been resting, and her movements were becoming increasingly erratic. Whatever had happened to her, her condition was deteriorating rapidly. Morrison faced a decision that could affect not only his mission but the lives of everyone under his command. Military doctrine was clear about avoiding potential traps and maintaining focus on primary objectives. They were here to capture or eliminate Khalil Hassan, not to conduct rescue operations for unknown civilians. However, the Navy SEAL creed was equally clear about never leaving anyone behind and protecting those who could not protect themselves. Williams reported that he could see no obvious signs of enemy activity in the surrounding area. His scope had excellent magnification and thermal imaging capabilities, and he had been systematically scanning every possible hiding place where hostile forces might be waiting in ambush. The valley appeared to contain only the injured woman and the distant village, but appearances had been wrong before with deadly consequences. Chen made the argument that they had a moral obligation to help someone who was clearly in distress, regardless of their primary mission requirements. His medical oath required him to provide aid to anyone who needed it, and the woman's condition suggested that she would not survive much longer without immediate intervention. The humanitarian aspect of their presence in Afghanistan was just as important as the military objectives they pursued. Morrison weighed all the factors as he watched the woman's increasingly desperate attempts to continue moving. His team was highly trained and well equipped to handle unexpected situations, and they had backup support available if needed. The mission to capture Hassan was important, but it was not more important than saving an innocent life if that was possible. He made the decision that would change everything for all of them. The team would investigate the woman's situation while maintaining maximum tactical awareness and readiness for potential threats. They would approach carefully, with overwatch positions maintained and communication protocols strictly observed. If it was a trap, they would be ready for it. If it was a genuine emergency, they would provide whatever assistance was possible while continuing their primary mission. As Morrison gave the signal to begin their descent toward the valley floor, none of them realized that they were about to encounter someone who would completely redefine their understanding of courage, deception, and survival. The injured woman bleeding behind that boulder was about to teach them lessons that no military training could have prepared them for. And, before this day was over, every member of Team 7 would have a new appreciation for the deadly art of never underestimating anyone, no matter how vulnerable they might appear. The descent into the valley took Team 7 nearly 40 minutes of careful movement through terrain that seemed designed to break ankles and expose them to enemy fire. Morrison led the way, testing each foothold before committing his full weight while his team maintained overwatch positions that shifted systematically as they moved. The woman had not moved from behind the boulder for over 15 minutes, and Chen was becoming increasingly concerned that they might arrive too late to help her. Rodriguez maintained constant communication with their base, updating their position and situation status every 5 minutes according to standard operating procedures. The radio chatter from headquarters indicated that other teams were continuing operations throughout the region, but no additional intelligence had emerged regarding their specific target or the woman they were approaching. Command had authorized them to investigate and provide assistance if needed, but their primary mission remained unchanged. Williams repositioned himself 3 times during their approach, always seeking higher ground where his rifle could provide maximum coverage for his teammates. His scope revealed additional details about the woman's condition as they got closer. She appeared to be in her 30s with olive-toned skin and delicate features that suggested Mediterranean or Middle Eastern heritage. Her clothing was civilian rather than military, consisting of practical hiking boots, dark pants, and a torn jacket that had once been light blue. Kumar's electronic surveillance detected no hostile communications in the immediate area, but he noted several encrypted transmissions originating from the direction of the village. The signals were too sophisticated for typical civilian communications, suggesting that someone in the settlement had access to military-grade equipment. This could indicate the presence of enemy fighters, or it could simply mean that coalition forces were operating in the area. Without additional context, it was impossible to determine whether the transmissions represented a threat. Park identified 3 potential escape routes from their current position, memorizing landmarks and calculating distances in case they needed to evacuate quickly. His explosive ordnance training had taught him to always think in terms of blast radii and kill zones, and this valley offered numerous opportunities for enemies to inflict maximum casualties on approaching forces. However, his detailed examination of the ground had revealed no evidence of recently placed explosives or prepared ambush positions. When they reached a position approximately 50 meters from the woman's location, Morrison signaled for the team to establish a defensive perimeter while he and Chen approached to make contact. The woman appeared to be unconscious now, her body motionless behind the boulder except for the shallow rise and fall of her chest. Blood had pooled beneath her position, creating dark stains on the rocky ground that confirmed the seriousness of her injuries. Chen moved forward with his medical kit ready, his training automatically assessing the woman's condition from every angle he could observe. Her breathing was rapid and shallow, suggesting possible internal injuries or significant blood loss. Her skin had a pale, waxy appearance that indicated shock, and her pulse was visible at her neck, rapid and weak. Without immediate medical intervention, she would likely die within the next few hours. Morrison kept his rifle ready while staying close enough to Chen to provide protection if needed. His eyes continuously scanned the surrounding area for any signs of movement or threat. The woman's position behind the boulder provided excellent concealment from the village direction, which could mean she had chosen it deliberately to hide from pursuers. Alternatively, it could mean that she had simply collapsed when her strength gave out and had been unable to continue. As Chen knelt beside the woman to begin his medical assessment, she suddenly opened her eyes. Morrison was struck by their unusual green color and the intelligence that seemed to flash within them despite her obvious physical distress. She looked directly at Chen and spoke in accented English, her voice barely above a whisper but surprisingly clear given her condition. Her name was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, and she was an American archaeologist who had been conducting research in the region under the auspices of a university expedition. She explained that her research team had been attacked 3 days earlier by armed men who had demanded information about recent discoveries. When the team had refused to cooperate, the attackers had become violent, killing her colleagues and leaving her for dead after she had been shot in the shoulder and suffered a severe blow to her head. Chen examined her injuries while she spoke, noting that her story was consistent with the physical evidence he could observe. The gunshot wound to her shoulder was several days old and showed signs of infection despite crude field treatment. She had multiple bruises and abrasions consistent with being beaten and falling repeatedly on rocky ground. Her head injury had caused a significant bump behind her left ear, and she displayed symptoms of mild concussion including occasional disorientation and sensitivity to light. Dr. Mitchell explained that she had been hiding in caves and abandoned buildings while trying to make her way to safety, but her injuries and lack of supplies had made progress increasingly difficult. She had been surviving on water from mountain streams and whatever edible plants she could identify, but her condition had been steadily deteriorating. The previous night, she had developed a fever that had left her weak and confused about direction and distance. Morrison found himself impressed by the woman's composure despite her obvious suffering. She answered their questions clearly and provided detailed information about her situation without displaying the hysteria or panic that might be expected from someone who had endured such trauma. Her medical condition was serious but not immediately life-threatening if she received proper treatment, and her story seemed credible based on the physical evidence they could observe. Chen began administering first aid, cleaning and bandaging the infected gunshot wound while preparing an antibiotic injection to combat the developing infection. Dr. Mitchell endured his treatment without complaint, even managing to provide additional details about the men who had attacked her research expedition. She described them as well-equipped and disciplined, suggesting military training rather than typical bandit activity. Their leader had spoken excellent English and had seemed particularly interested in ancient artifacts that the team had recently uncovered. The description of the attackers raised concerns for Morrison about the potential connection to their own mission. Khalil Hassan was known to fund his bomb-making operations through the sale of stolen artifacts on the international black market. It was possible that Dr. Mitchell's research team had unknowingly stumbled across one of his supply operations, leading to their deadly encounter. This could mean that Hassan was closer than they had originally estimated and that the intelligence leading them to this area had been accurate after all. Rodriguez intercepted a brief radio transmission in Pashto that mentioned American soldiers and a wounded woman, but the signal was too weak to determine its source or intended recipient. The timing suggested that someone had observed their approach to Dr. Mitchell's position and was reporting their activities to unknown parties. This could indicate that they were walking into a trap, or it could simply mean that local villagers were notifying each other about the presence of coalition forces in their area. Williams reported movement in the village below, with several men gathering in what appeared to be an organized manner rather than casual conversation. His scope could not reveal details about their intentions or equipment, but their behavior suggested a level of coordination that could be significant. They seemed to be looking in the direction of Team 7's position, though the distance made it impossible to determine whether they had actually spotted the American soldiers. Kumar detected an increase in encrypted radio traffic originating from the village, with signals being transmitted to locations beyond his equipment's ability to track. The sophistication of the encryption suggested military-grade communication equipment, which supported Dr. Mitchell's description of well-trained attackers. Someone in the village had access to technology that was more advanced than typical civilian communications, indicating the possible presence of enemy fighters. Park identified several positions around their current location where explosive devices could potentially be placed to maximum effect. His analysis suggested that if this was indeed a trap, the enemy had chosen their ground well. However, his detailed examination of the immediate area continued to reveal no evidence of prepared explosives or disturbed earth that might indicate recently buried weapons. Dr. Mitchell provided additional details about the artifacts that had interested her attackers, describing ancient weapons and tools that had been discovered in a cave system approximately 10 kilometers from their current position. The items were potentially valuable to collectors, but she insisted that her team had followed all legal protocols for reporting archaeological discoveries to Afghan authorities. The attackers had seemed more interested in the location of additional artifacts than in taking the items that had already been found. Chen completed his initial treatment and reported that Dr. Mitchell's condition was stable enough for transport if handled carefully. Her injuries required more extensive medical attention than he could provide in the field, but she was not in immediate danger of dying if they could evacuate her to proper medical facilities. The infection in her shoulder wound was responding to antibiotic treatment, and her concussion symptoms were mild enough that she could remain conscious and mobile with assistance. Morrison faced another critical decision about how to proceed with both Dr. Mitchell and their original mission. They could evacuate her immediately to ensure her safety, but this would mean abandoning their pursuit of Hassan and potentially allowing him to escape once again. Alternatively, they could take her with them as they continued their mission, but this would slow their movement and increase the risk to everyone involved if they encountered enemy forces. Dr. Mitchell surprised them by requesting to accompany the team rather than being evacuated immediately. She explained that her knowledge of the local terrain and cave systems could be valuable for their operations, and she insisted that she was strong enough to travel if they moved carefully. Her motivation seemed to be a desire for revenge against the men who had killed her colleagues rather than simple gratitude for being rescued. The woman's request created new complications for Morrison's tactical planning. Standard operating procedures discouraged bringing civilians along on combat missions, but Dr. Mitchell's local knowledge could potentially be invaluable for tracking Hassan through this difficult terrain. Her injuries would slow their progress, but her information about recent enemy activity in the area might more than compensate for the tactical disadvantages of traveling with a wounded civilian. As Morrison weighed these factors, he noticed that Dr. Mitchell was studying his team with the same careful attention that trained observers used when assessing potential threats or opportunities. Her green eyes seemed to catalog every piece of equipment they carried and every tactical position they had established. For someone who had supposedly been hiding in caves for 3 days, she seemed remarkably alert and analytical about military procedures and equipment. Chen finished securing his medical supplies and reported that he had done everything possible for Dr. Mitchell's immediate needs. She would require more extensive treatment eventually, but her condition should remain stable for at least 24 hours with proper care. The decision about whether to evacuate her or continue the mission with her assistance now rested entirely with Morrison's judgment about tactical priorities and acceptable risk levels. The radio crackled with an urgent message from Williams, who reported that the men in the village below were definitely moving in an organized fashion toward their general location. His count indicated at least 8 individuals, and several appeared to be carrying weapons. The distance was still too great for detailed observation, but their movement patterns suggested tactical training rather than casual curiosity about the presence of American forces in their area. Morrison realized that time for deliberation was rapidly running out as circumstances forced his hand toward immediate action. Morrison's decision was made for him when Dr. Mitchell suddenly stood up with surprising agility for someone who had appeared near death just minutes earlier. The movement was fluid and controlled, lacking the careful uncertainty of someone suffering from severe injuries and concussion symptoms. Chen stepped back in amazement, his medical training telling him that what he was witnessing should have been impossible given the woman's apparent condition. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's entire demeanor changed in that instant, transforming from injured victim to someone radiating quiet confidence and deadly capability. Her green eyes, which had seemed glazed with pain and confusion, now sparkled with sharp intelligence and what Morrison recognized as tactical awareness. The way she held herself suggested military training, and her careful observation of their positions and equipment indicated familiarity with combat operations. She reached into her torn jacket and withdrew a small device that Kumar immediately recognized as a military-grade encrypted communication unit. Her fingers moved across its controls with the practiced ease of someone who had used such equipment countless times before. Within seconds, she was speaking in rapid, fluent Arabic to someone who was clearly receiving detailed instructions about the approaching men from the village. Morrison's rifle was in his hands and trained on Dr. Mitchell before he had consciously decided to move. His team instantly shifted their positions to establish fields of fire while maintaining cover from multiple directions. Every instinct developed through years of combat experience was screaming warnings about deception and imminent danger, but the woman showed no signs of alarm at having 6 weapons suddenly focused on her position. Instead of appearing threatened, Dr. Mitchell smiled and raised her hands in a gesture that was more reassuring than surrendering. She spoke in perfect, unaccented English that contained none of the hesitation or weakness that had characterized her earlier communications. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to giving orders and having them followed without question. She introduced herself again, but this time with a different story that made Morrison's blood run cold. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was indeed an American, but she was not an archaeologist studying ancient artifacts in Afghanistan. She was a CIA operative who had been working undercover for the past 18 months to infiltrate the same network that Team 7 was pursuing. Her mission was to locate and eliminate Khalil Hassan through methods that official military operations could not employ. The injuries that Chen had treated were real, but they had been sustained during her successful infiltration of Hassan's organization rather than from an attack on archaeological researchers. She had spent the past 3 days extracting herself from his compound after completing her primary objective, which was gathering intelligence about his bomb-making operations and identifying his key associates throughout the region. Morrison felt a mixture of anger and admiration as he realized how completely they had been deceived by someone who had appeared to be a helpless victim. Dr. Mitchell had used their natural instincts to help someone in distress as a way to make contact with them, but her true purpose remained unclear. She could have been testing their capabilities, seeking extraction assistance, or leading them into a sophisticated trap that was more elaborate than anything they had previously encountered. Chen examined his medical readings again and realized that many of Dr. Mitchell's symptoms had been artificially created or exaggerated to support her cover story. The gunshot wound was real and several days old, but it had been treated with professional medical care rather than crude field dressings. Her concussion symptoms had been largely theatrical, designed to explain any inconsistencies in her behavior or responses to their questions. Rodriguez intercepted the end of Dr. Mitchell's radio conversation and reported that she had been coordinating with other CIA operatives who were positioning themselves around the approaching men from the village. Her communication had included detailed tactical information about Team 7's positions and capabilities, suggesting that she had been observing and evaluating them since they first appeared on the ridge above. The level of detail in her report indicated professional intelligence training and extensive experience with military operations. Williams confirmed that the men from the village were continuing their approach but had slowed their movement and adopted more cautious formations. His scope revealed that several were carrying AK-47 rifles while others appeared to have more sophisticated weapons that could include rocket-propelled grenades or sniper rifles. Their tactical discipline suggested military training, supporting Dr. Mitchell's claims about the nature of Hassan's organization. Kumar detected additional encrypted communications from multiple sources throughout the valley, indicating that Dr. Mitchell's operation involved considerably more personnel and resources than her solitary appearance had suggested. The radio traffic suggested a coordinated intelligence operation that had been in progress for several hours before Team 7 arrived in the area. They had unknowingly walked into the middle of a complex CIA mission that was approaching its climax. Park re-evaluated the tactical situation based on this new information, identifying positions where CIA operatives could potentially be concealed while maintaining overwatch on both the approaching village men and Team 7's location. His analysis suggested that Dr. Mitchell's people had chosen their positions well, creating multiple layers of surveillance and fire support that could eliminate threats from several directions simultaneously. Dr. Mitchell explained that Hassan had indeed been in the area as their intelligence had indicated, but he had departed 2 days earlier after receiving warnings about increased American military activity in the region. Her infiltration of his organization had provided detailed information about his current location, which was approximately 40 kilometers south of their present position in a heavily fortified compound that would require significant resources to assault successfully. The information about Hassan's departure meant that Team 7's original mission was essentially pointless, but Dr. Mitchell had intelligence that could lead to a much more significant operation against his entire network. She had identified the locations of 3 bomb-making facilities, documented the identities of dozens of his associates, and obtained detailed financial records that could be used to disrupt his funding sources throughout the region. Morrison realized that he was facing a decision that was far more complex than anything covered in his mission briefing. Dr. Mitchell was offering to share intelligence that could significantly advance American objectives in Afghanistan, but accepting her offer would mean abandoning his team's original orders and potentially compromising other ongoing operations. The political and military implications of cooperating with unauthorized CIA activities could have serious consequences for everyone involved. Chen reported that several of Dr. Mitchell's injuries were more serious than she was acknowledging, despite her claims of operational readiness. The infection in her shoulder wound had been treated but not cured, and she was likely operating on adrenaline and pain medication that would eventually wear off. Her actual medical condition would make sustained combat operations dangerous for both herself and anyone working with her. The approaching men from the village had closed to within 800 meters of their position, putting them within effective range of several weapon systems that Team 7 carried. Williams reported that the group appeared to be conducting a methodical search pattern rather than moving directly toward their specific location, suggesting that they knew Americans were in the area but had not pinpointed their exact position. Dr. Mitchell activated her communication device again and spoke briefly in what sounded like Farsi to someone who responded immediately with detailed situation updates. The conversation indicated that her CIA team had been monitoring the village men for several hours and had identified them as members of Hassan's network who were conducting counter-surveillance operations in response to increased American activity in the region. Kumar intercepted portions of the CIA communication and confirmed that Dr. Mitchell's people had established multiple observation posts throughout the valley with overlapping fields of fire that could eliminate the approaching threats within minutes. However, their rules of engagement apparently required confirmation that hostile intent had been clearly demonstrated before taking lethal action against potentially civilian targets. Rodriguez received updated orders from headquarters that complicated the situation even further. Command had been monitoring their communications and was aware of their contact with Dr. Mitchell, but they had not been informed about ongoing CIA operations in the area. The lack of coordination between agencies was creating potential for friendly fire incidents or political complications that could have serious consequences for international relations. Park identified 3 escape routes that would allow Team 7 to withdraw from the area without engaging either Dr. Mitchell's people or the approaching village men. However, using these routes would mean abandoning any opportunity to gather intelligence about Hassan's network and potentially allowing dangerous enemies to escape or continue their operations against American forces. Williams reported that the village men had stopped their advance approximately 600 meters away and appeared to be establishing defensive positions among the rocks. Their behavior suggested that they were aware of being observed and were preparing for a potential confrontation rather than continuing their search pattern. This development indicated that the situation was escalating toward violence regardless of Team 7's decisions about cooperation with CIA operations. Dr. Mitchell seemed to read Morrison's tactical assessment and offered a solution that could address multiple objectives simultaneously. Her CIA team could eliminate the immediate threat posed by Hassan's men while providing Team 7 with actionable intelligence about bomb-making operations throughout the region. In exchange, she requested assistance with extraction to a secure location where she could be properly treated for her injuries and debriefed about her infiltration operation. The proposal was tempting because it offered the possibility of achieving far more than their original mission objectives while potentially eliminating immediate threats to American forces in the area. However, Morrison knew that accepting Dr. Mitchell's offer would mean taking responsibility for the consequences of unauthorized cooperation with CIA operations that could have significant political ramifications. Chen expressed concerns about Dr. Mitchell's actual medical condition and her ability to participate in combat operations if the situation deteriorated further. Her injuries were real and potentially serious, despite her claims of operational readiness. The combination of infection, blood loss, and physical trauma would eventually overwhelm whatever medications or adrenaline were currently maintaining her apparent capabilities. Kumar detected new communication signals indicating that additional personnel were moving into the area from multiple directions. The signals suggested that both CIA operatives and potential enemy forces were converging on their location, creating a complex tactical situation that could rapidly become chaotic and dangerous for everyone involved. The window for making decisions and taking action was closing rapidly as circumstances forced events toward an inevitable confrontation. Morrison looked at Dr. Mitchell's confident expression and realized that she had been controlling this situation from the moment they first spotted her stumbling through the valley. Her appearance as an injured victim had been carefully calculated to draw them into exactly this position at exactly this time. The question now was whether her ultimate objectives aligned with American interests or whether Team 7 was being manipulated into serving purposes that they did not fully understand. The radio crackled with urgent communications from multiple sources as the tactical situation continued evolving towards something that none of them had anticipated when they began their descent into the valley that morning. The silence that followed Morrison's realization was broken by the sharp crack of a rifle shot echoing across the valley. Williams immediately reported that one of the approaching men had fallen, but the shot had not come from any American weapon. Dr. Mitchell's expression remained calm as she spoke quietly into her communication device, confirming what Morrison already suspected about the level of lethal capability that her CIA team possessed. The remaining men from the village immediately took cover among the rocks and began returning fire in the general direction from which they believed the shot had originated. Their weapons discipline was excellent, with controlled bursts rather than panicked automatic fire, confirming Dr. Mitchell's assessment that these were trained fighters rather than local civilians. The engagement that was now beginning would test everyone's skills and resolve. Morrison's training took over as he directed his team to establish defensive positions that would provide protection while maintaining fields of fire toward multiple potential threats. The tactical situation was complicated by uncertainty about the locations and intentions of Dr. Mitchell's CIA operatives, who could potentially mistake Team 7 for hostile forces if communications broke down during combat operations. Rodriguez established communication with headquarters and requested immediate clarification about ongoing CIA operations in their area of responsibility. The response was frustrating but not surprising given the compartmentalized nature of intelligence operations. Command confirmed that other American agencies were operating in the region but could not provide details about specific missions or personnel without compromising operational security. Chen moved closer to Dr. Mitchell and noticed that her injuries were affecting her more than she was willing to admit. Despite her confident demeanor, she was favoring her wounded shoulder and showing signs of fatigue that suggested the infection and blood loss were taking their toll. Her operational capabilities were likely to deteriorate rapidly if the situation required sustained physical activity or combat operations. Williams engaged one of the enemy fighters who had exposed himself while trying to gain a better firing position, eliminating the threat with a single precision shot from his Barrett rifle. His accuracy at long distance was legendary among SEAL teams, and his demonstration of lethal capability seemed to impress Dr. Mitchell despite her own obvious experience with military operations. Kumar intercepted radio communications indicating that Hassan's men were calling for reinforcements from locations throughout the valley. The encrypted signals suggested that they had access to considerably more personnel than the 8 men originally spotted approaching from the village. Dr. Mitchell's operation had apparently stirred up a much larger hornet's nest than anyone had anticipated. Park identified positions where enemy forces could potentially establish machine gun emplacements or mortar positions that would pose serious threats to their current location. His explosive ordnance expertise allowed him to anticipate how enemies might use terrain to maximum advantage, and his analysis suggested that they needed to either advance or withdraw quickly before becoming pinned down in an untenable position. Dr. Mitchell revealed additional details about her mission that explained the current tactical situation. She had not simply been gathering intelligence about Hassan's bomb-making operations but had been systematically sabotaging his network from within for over a year. Her activities had included destroying explosive stockpiles, eliminating key personnel, and disrupting financial arrangements that funded terrorist operations throughout the region. The scope of Dr. Mitchell's accomplishments was impressive by any measure, but it also explained why Hassan's remaining organization was making such determined efforts to eliminate her. She possessed detailed knowledge about operational methods, personnel locations, and financial networks that could completely destroy his remaining capabilities if shared with coalition forces. Her extraction from the area had become a matter of strategic importance for American intelligence operations. Morrison began to understand why Dr. Mitchell had chosen to make contact with Team 7 rather than simply requesting extraction through CIA channels. Her own agency's resources in the area were limited to the small team currently providing Overwatch support, and they lacked the heavy weapons and tactical capabilities needed to fight their way through what was becoming a significant enemy response to her presence. The engagement intensified as additional enemy fighters arrived from the direction of the village, bringing the total opposing force to approximately 15 armed men with military training and experience. Their weapons included several RPG launchers that posed serious threats to anyone caught in exposed positions, and their tactical coordination suggested that they had worked together extensively in previous combat operations. Williams reported that he could identify at least 3 enemy sniper positions based on muzzle flashes and the sound signatures of different weapons being fired. His counter-sniper training allowed him to estimate ranges and likely positions, but the complex terrain provided numerous concealed firing positions that would be difficult to clear without significant ammunition expenditure and time. Chen provided medical attention to Dr. Mitchell while maintaining readiness to treat combat casualties as the engagement continued. Her shoulder wound had reopened during the recent activity, and the infection was causing fever and weakness that she was struggling to conceal. Despite her claims of operational readiness, her actual medical condition was becoming a liability for everyone involved in the deteriorating tactical situation. Kumar detected communications indicating that Hassan's men were attempting to coordinate with other enemy forces in the region to establish blocking positions on all possible escape routes from the valley. The scope of their response suggested that Dr. Mitchell's intelligence value was even greater than she had initially indicated, making her extraction a matter of critical importance for ongoing operations throughout Afghanistan. Rodriguez received updated orders from headquarters authorizing cooperation with CIA personnel in the area and directing Team 7 to provide assistance with extraction operations as needed. The authorization came with warnings about maintaining operational security and avoiding actions that could compromise other ongoing intelligence activities, but it provided clear legal authority for continued engagement with Dr. Mitchell and her people. Park utilized his explosive ordnance skills to create improvised defensive positions using charges from his demolition kit. The rocky terrain allowed him to bring down several large boulders that would provide better protection from enemy fire while creating obstacles that would force attackers to expose themselves when attempting to advance on their position. Dr. Mitchell demonstrated her own tactical capabilities by identifying enemy positions that Team 7 had not yet spotted and providing accurate range estimates for Williams to engage priority targets. Her knowledge of local terrain features allowed her to predict enemy movement patterns and suggest defensive measures that proved to be remarkably effective against the coordinated assault that Hassan's men were attempting to organize. The battle continued for nearly 2 hours as enemy forces probed for weaknesses in the American defensive positions while attempting to establish their own fire superiority through superior numbers and local knowledge. Williams eliminated 6 enemy fighters with precise long-range shots, while the rest of Team 7 provided suppressing fire that prevented the remaining forces from coordinating effective attacks. Kumar's electronic surveillance detected the approach of additional enemy vehicles from the south, indicating that Hassan's organization had more resources available than intelligence estimates had suggested. The vehicles appeared to be technical trucks mounting heavy machine guns or small artillery pieces that could provide decisive firepower advantages if allowed to reach effective firing positions. Morrison realized that their defensive position, while strong against infantry assault, would become untenable if enemy forces could bring vehicle-mounted weapons to bear on their location. The tactical situation was evolving in ways that required immediate action to prevent being overwhelmed by superior firepower and numbers. Dr. Mitchell activated her communication device and spoke urgently to her CIA team about the approaching vehicles. Her conversation included specific grid coordinates and tactical instructions that suggested her people had capabilities beyond simple sniper support. Within minutes, the sound of helicopter rotors could be heard approaching from the north, indicating that air support assets were being deployed to address the deteriorating situation. Chen reported that Dr. Mitchell's medical condition was continuing to deteriorate despite her efforts to remain operational. The combination of infection, blood loss, and physical stress was beginning to overwhelm her body's ability to compensate, and she would likely require immediate evacuation to proper medical facilities regardless of the tactical situation. Williams observed that enemy forces were beginning to withdraw from their forward positions as the helicopter sounds grew louder, suggesting that they recognized the threat posed by American air support assets. However, their withdrawal appeared to be tactical rather than a complete retreat, indicating that they were repositioning for continued engagement rather than abandoning their efforts to eliminate Dr. Mitchell. The approaching helicopters turned out to be a pair of AH-64 Apache attack aircraft that immediately began engaging the enemy vehicle column with Hellfire missiles and cannon fire. The devastating accuracy of their weapons systems eliminated the immediate threat posed by heavy weapons while demonstrating the level of support that American intelligence agencies could bring to bear when circumstances required decisive action. Kumar intercepted enemy communications indicating that Hassan himself was coordinating the attack from a location approximately 10 kilometers south of their position. The intelligence suggested that he viewed Dr. Mitchell's elimination is critical for the survival of his remaining organization, making this engagement a matter of personal importance rather than simply another tactical operation against American forces. Morrison coordinated with the Apache pilots to establish close air support coverage while planning extraction routes that would allow Dr. Mitchell and Team 7 to reach secure areas where medical attention and debriefing operations could take place. The successful completion of her mission would provide intelligence benefits that could significantly advance American objectives throughout the region. Rodriguez confirmed that additional friendly forces were being deployed to establish security perimeters and prevent enemy reinforcements from interfering with extraction operations. The scope of resources being committed to Dr. Mitchell's extraction demonstrated the strategic importance of the intelligence she had gathered during her infiltration of Hassan's organization. Park prepared demolition charges that would deny enemy forces the use of their current defensive positions after extraction was completed. His charges would also eliminate any equipment or intelligence materials that could not be safely removed, preventing enemy forces from gaining any advantage from examining American tactical methods or equipment. As the immediate combat situation stabilized with air support overhead, Morrison began to appreciate the remarkable courage and skill that Dr. Mitchell had demonstrated throughout her extended undercover mission. Her willingness to endure genuine injury and hardship while maintaining operational effectiveness had contributed significantly to American intelligence capabilities in one of the most dangerous regions of Afghanistan. The extraction helicopter arrived just as the afternoon sun began casting long shadows across the valley floor. It was a modified Black Hawk with additional armor plating and defensive systems, clearly designed for operations in hostile territory where enemy fire was expected rather than merely possible. The aircraft's crew chief was already preparing medical equipment before the helicopter touched down, indicating that Dr. Mitchell's condition had been accurately communicated to extraction personnel. Morrison watched as Dr. Mitchell finally allowed her exhaustion and pain to show as adrenaline began wearing off and the immediate tactical situation stabilized. Her transformation from apparent victim to deadly operative and back to injured human being had been remarkable to witness. The level of dedication and sacrifice required to maintain an undercover identity for 18 months in enemy territory was beyond what most people could comprehend or endure. Chin conducted a final medical assessment before Dr. Mitchell's transfer to the helicopter's medical team. Her shoulder wound required immediate surgical attention to prevent permanent nerve damage, and the infection had progressed further than she had been willing to acknowledge during combat operations. Her vital signs indicated significant physical stress, but she remained conscious and alert despite obvious pain and fatigue. The helicopter's crew chief turned out to be a Navy corpsman with advanced trauma training who immediately began preparing Dr. Mitchell for medical evacuation to a field hospital where surgical facilities were available. His efficient movements and professional calm provided reassurance that she would receive the best possible care despite the serious nature of her injuries and the remote location where treatment had to begin. Williams maintained overwatch positions as extraction operations proceeded, scanning for any signs that enemy forces might attempt to interfere with the helicopter departure. His scope revealed no immediate threats, but several groups of armed men were visible at distances that could potentially pose risks if they possessed shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles or other sophisticated weapons systems. Kumar monitored radio frequencies for any enemy communications that might indicate preparations for attacks against the extraction helicopter. The signals he detected suggested that Hassan's remaining forces were withdrawing from the area rather than regrouping for continued engagement. Their tactical discipline remained impressive even in defeat, as they conducted organized retrograde movements that would preserve their personnel and equipment for future operations. Rodriguez coordinated with multiple headquarters elements to ensure that Dr. Mitchell's extraction did not compromise other ongoing operations in the region. Her intelligence about Hassan's network would require careful analysis and planning to exploit effectively without alerting remaining enemy forces to the extent of her infiltration accomplishments. Park completed his demolition preparations and armed charges that would destroy their defensive positions and any equipment that could not be safely extracted. His work would ensure that enemy forces could gain no intelligence about American tactical methods or capabilities from examining the site after their departure. Dr. Mitchell insisted on speaking privately with Morrison before boarding the extraction helicopter. Despite her obvious pain and exhaustion, she wanted to express appreciation for Team 7's professionalism and tactical competence during the complex situation that had developed around her extraction. Her evaluation of their capabilities would become part of official reports that could influence future joint operations between military and intelligence agencies. Morrison found himself genuinely impressed by Dr. Mitchell's courage and operational achievements during her extended undercover mission. Her willingness to endure genuine hardship and danger while maintaining the deception necessary for intelligence gathering represented the highest levels of dedication to duty and service to country. Team 7 had learned valuable lessons about the importance of never underestimating anyone based on appearances alone. The intelligence that Dr. Mitchell had gathered during her infiltration would lead to operations against bomb-making facilities throughout the region and the capture or elimination of dozens of Hassan's associates. Her sacrifice and skill had significantly advanced American objectives in Afghanistan while potentially saving countless lives that would have been lost to terrorist attacks using explosives manufactured in Hassan's network. Chen reported that Dr. Mitchell's medical condition remained stable for transport but would require immediate surgical intervention upon arrival at the field hospital. Her determination to remain operational despite serious injuries had been remarkable, but continued delay of proper medical treatment could result in permanent disability or life-threatening complications. Williams confirmed that the area around the extraction site remained clear of immediate threats, though several enemy groups were visible at safe distances. The Apache helicopters continued providing overwatch coverage to ensure that no surface-to-air missiles or other weapons could threaten the extraction aircraft during its most vulnerable phases of takeoff and initial climb. Kumar intercepted final enemy communications indicating that Hassan himself had departed the area shortly after his forces failed to eliminate Dr. Mitchell during the Valley engagement. Intelligence suggested that he was fleeing toward Pakistani border regions where he could potentially establish new operational bases beyond the reach of American forces. Rodriguez received confirmation that multiple follow-up operations were being planned based on Dr. Mitchell's intelligence about Hassan's network, financial operations, and bomb-making facilities. The scope of information she had provided would keep intelligence analysts and special operations teams busy for months while systematically dismantling the infrastructure that supported terrorist activities throughout the region. Park activated his demolition charges as the extraction helicopter lifted off, destroying defensive positions and eliminating any evidence that could compromise future operations in the area. The explosion sent columns of smoke and debris into the air, marking the end of Team 7's most unusual and educational mission to date. Dr. Mitchell's final radio transmission to Team 7 came as her extraction helicopter disappeared over the southern ridgeline. Her voice was weak but clear as she thanked them for their professionalism and wished them success in future operations. Her words carried the respect that one professional warrior shows to others who have proven themselves under the most challenging circumstances. Morrison gathered his team for extraction to their own base, knowing that their mission reports would require careful consideration of operational security requirements and the complex political implications of their cooperation with CIA operations. The lessons they had learned about deception, courage, and the importance of never underestimating potential allies or enemies would influence their approach to future missions throughout their careers. Chen packed his medical equipment while reflecting on the remarkable resilience that Dr. Mitchell had demonstrated despite serious injuries and life-threatening circumstances. Her ability to maintain operational effectiveness while enduring genuine physical trauma had been unlike anything he had encountered in his medical training or previous combat experience. Williams disassembled his sniper rifle while considering the tactical lessons learned from observing Dr. Mitchell's deception and the enemy response to her presence in the area. Her ability to manipulate circumstances and control situations through careful planning and flawless execution would serve as examples of operational excellence for years to come. Kumar secured his electronic surveillance equipment while analyzing the complex communication networks that had been revealed during the engagement. The sophistication of both CIA and enemy communication systems had demonstrated capabilities that would influence his approach to electronic warfare in future operations. Rodriguez completed his final situation reports while ensuring that all sensitive communications had been properly secured and transmitted to appropriate headquarters elements. The coordination requirements for joint operations between military and intelligence agencies had proven to be more complex than standard training scenarios had suggested. Park conducted final equipment checks while considering the demolition techniques that could be applied in future operations involving complex terrain and multiple friendly forces operating in close proximity. The challenges of providing explosive support without compromising the safety of Allied personnel had required innovative approaches to charge placement and timing. Team 7's helicopter extraction proceeded without incident as they departed the valley where they had learned so much about courage, deception, and the deadly art of never underestimating anyone regardless of their apparent condition or circumstances. The mission would be remembered as one of their most challenging and educational experiences, providing lessons that would prove invaluable throughout their continued service. 6 months later, Morrison received a letter from Dr. Sarah Mitchell informing him that she had recovered completely from her injuries and returned to operational duties with the CIA. Her work continued in other dangerous regions where American interests required dedicated professionals willing to sacrifice their safety and comfort for the greater good of national security. The letter included her appreciation for Team 7's professionalism and an invitation for Morrison to contact her if future operations required the kind of joint cooperation that had proven so successful in Afghanistan. The final paragraph of her letter contained a simple but profound observation that Morrison would remember for the rest of his career. Dr. Mitchell wrote that the most dangerous people in the world are often those who appear most vulnerable, and the most valuable allies are frequently found in the most unexpected circumstances. She concluded by noting that underestimating anyone, whether enemy or friend, can be the difference between success and failure in operations where lives and national interests hang in the balance. Team 7 never forgot their encounter with the woman who had appeared injured but turned out to be one of the most capable and courageous operatives they had ever met. Her example influenced their approach to every subsequent mission, reminding them that appearances can be deceiving and that true strength often comes from sources that are not immediately obvious to casual observation. The intelligence gathered by Dr. Mitchell's infiltration operation led to the disruption of terrorist networks throughout Afghanistan and the prevention of attacks that could have killed hundreds of innocent civilians. Her courage and sacrifice had made a difference that extended far beyond the remote mountain valley where Team 7 first encountered her, stumbling among the rocks, apparently helpless but actually more dangerous and capable than any of them had initially imagined possible.